Hey guys, Eric with Blue Line Fishing. Welcome back to the channel. Your time's important to me as always. And what we're going to do in today's time is we're going to talk about 10 different ways to rig a Senko or a stick bait. Lots of versatility of these stick baits, lots of different ways to rig them. Gives them a lot of different actions, a lot of different ways to utilize them. Stick around. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. 10 different ways to rig these stick baits or Senkos. And you know, I say Senko, and I love the traditional Gary Yamamoto Senko, but I've also used everything in between: the Strike King, the Yum Dinger, the Big Bite Baits, Trick Stick. I mean, you name it. I've tried all of them over the years. I think they all work great. They catch tons of fish. But what I really want to get into is showing you different ways to rig this bait. And I'm sure some of these ways you've seen, others hopefully you haven't, and you can take what you haven't and add it to your arsenal to be able to use the next time you're out there on the water. First way, guys, we're going to start out the basic Texas rig. One thing I would say about it, I usually prefer a 3 or 4/0 wide gap hook. And the reason I prefer a 3 or 4/0 is because there's lots of plastic when that fish bites that bait to punch through and wrap around, so that way you get a better hook set and get more into the jaw of the fish. But Texas rigging, I'll show you how it's done here real quick, super simple, and then I'll show you some variations of this Texas rig as well. So guys, we're going to start out with this 4/0 EWG hook. What EWG stands for is extra wide gap, and it also is an offset worm hook. When you see that on the packaging there, what that means is it's got this Z bend in it right here, and this bend is in line with the tip of the hook, as you can see here, and there's a reason for that. It's going to get that bait to lay nice and straight on the hook. I'm going to show you how to rig it here real quick. Super simple. All you're going to do is go right down the center of the worm there, about 1/4 of an inch down, and once you get to that Z right there, you're just going to rotate it 180 degrees, and you can see it's got a nice straight in line with the eyelet. Going to keep that worm nice and straight. What I like to do, about right where this hook is coming down on the egg sac here, you can see that larger portion of the worm, the egg sac. I like to take it and line it up with that. That way I get it in line and nice and straight. And you can see it keeps that worm nice and straight right there. And just a little bit, see if we can get that to focus in there. Just a little bit of the hook tip exposed. Now, if I'm fishing somewhere with heavy weeds, for example, it's got a lot of coontail moss or duckweed or something like that, I will take this and just pin it right there, pin the tip of the hook in, so it's a little more weedless. But that is your basic Texas rig, and now I'm going to show you some variations of the Texas rig. All right, guys, next way we're going to rig it up is Texas rig once again, like I just showed you guys, but this time with a belly weighted hook. And this right here is just 1/8 of an ounce belly weight. You know, you can get into the bigger ones like this. This one is I think it's 3/16, or even heavier if you want. But the reason I use a belly weighted hook a lot of times is that I am trying to stay, for example, above a weed line. If I'm fishing 8 foot of water and the weeds have grown up to say 4 foot, and I want to keep it just above it, rather than fishing it completely weightless and having to wait for that bait to get down there. And you know, sometimes that's what the fish want. They want that super slow fall, but when you pop that bait, it wants to ride up really quick. This belly weighted hook help keeps that bait in the strike zone and not have to work so hard to keep it at that depth level that I'm trying to fish. So this is another way to do it right here. Number 2, belly weighted Texas rig hook. So number 3, we're going to be back to the Texas rig once again here, and you can use this with a weightless hook on it. You can also use the belly weighted hook I was just showing you, but what we're going to do, we're going to utilize a power spinner. And if you've never seen a power spinner before, all it is a little pigtail with a swivel and then a split ring, and then this is a number 1 willow leaf. Now you can do different blade combinations. I make these myself. You can buy them, but I'll show you some different ones. One I like a lot and say dirty water is this hot pink right here, Colorado blade. You can put an Indiana blade on the back, any blade that you want, any color that you want to match the water clarity in the situations you're fishing at that time. But I'm going to show you how these work, and I'm telling you, this is a different look. That just, these power spinners are nothing new, and they haven't been out there that long, but it's rare when I see guys throw them. So I think a lot of times that adds that little extra something that you need to get bit, especially when you're fishing those heavily pressured waters or just when the bite's really tough. But anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my Senko here, and I'm going to take my power spinner, and I'm just going to screw this into the end of the worm here. And once I get this in here, one thing I like to do too is usually put a drop or two of super glue on the end of this, because you catch a fish or two and it has a tendency to want to fall out. It's really annoying when you start losing your rigs and your baits in the water. So there you go. You rig it up like that, and you've got your power spinner on the end. So now when that bait is shimmying down through the water and it's going to fall unevenly, it's going to fall, and it's also going to have that flash from this power spinner off the end of it. And it's just something that, once again, the fish do not see a whole lot. So power spinner, number 3 way to rig up these Senkos. Okay guys, 4th way to rig this up, Texas rig with a bullet weight and pegged. Now, I know a lot of guys like to fish it unpegged so it can slide up and down. You can do that too. Just in my personal experience, I've had a little better luck with it when I can peg it, but I can also slide this peg up if need be. That way that weight will slide around, and it's kind of a bonus. You can adjust this leader size here, if you will, and you can Carolina rig it. But the way I've got this rigged up here, I've got my bobber stopper or my peg right here, and then I've got a 1/2 ounce tungsten weight, 3/0 hook, and then my 5-inch Senko. So that's the setup as far as having this pegged, Texas rigged, and weighted like that with the bullet weight on there. And like I say, you can just slide this up. If you want to Carolina rig it, that's kind of a bonus there. I'm not counting that in as another way to rig it, but it is. And all you have to do, and I don't have them like this, is right here on this side of the line. You can see I've got the peg here, and I've got my bullet weight. If you put another peg below it, you can slide both of them up, and you can make this leader as long or as short as you want it to your bait, and you can have a Carolina rig. So very convenient out on the water. And if you put that other peg below it, when I get this back down here, you'll see you won't be able to really see or feel that other peg underneath there too. So that's a 4th way to rig this up. Texas rig with the bullet weight, give it a lot more versatility when it comes to your Texas rigging. Now let's get into some other rigging styles. All right guys, 5th way to rig this up, the Wacky Rig. And I'm going to show you some variations of this. It's going to give it a different look and a different feel, and definitely a different profile in the water. But first is just the simple Wacky Rig, and I'm going to show you how to rig this up too. All right guys, you got your stick bait, got your Wacky Worm tool. If you don't have one of these, get one of these, because it makes life a lot easier to get these O-rings on. I do like using the O-rings because I think it saves some baits. You can rig directly in the middle of the bait for the Wacky Rig with your hook, but almost all of these, they're really salt impregnated baits, so they tear easily. You're going to go through a lot of baits during the day, especially if you really get on a bite. So these O-rings, I think, definitely save some baits out there on the water. So what you're going to do, you're going to take your Wacky Worm tool, you're going to run this down. I like to go right to the back end here. You start with the fat end, the meaty end. You know, on these stick baits, they have the fat end, kind of the tapered off tail end. Something else too, if you've never noticed on these stick baits, from Senkos to, I don't care the manufacturer, they almost all of them have a bow in it. You can see right here, see that bow in it? It's not the way it was stored. This is out of the package, I mean, but they all have that little bit of bow area. I usually try and like to get that area, my hook running through it with the hook running out on the opposite side. The reason being, I think it cups a little more water, so when it comes down through the water column, this thing is Wacky Worm, you know, it's undulating as it goes down through there. Or if you've got it Texas rigged, it's cupping a little more water. It's got that shimmy that we want, because that shimmy as it falls through the water is just what drives those fish crazy. So I'm going to take this Wacky Worm tool right here. I'm going to run the bait down to the back end of the egg sac here, that slick area. And when it's about right there, I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to run my hook through it. So guys, I'm going to take my hook here. What I've got here is just a little 1/0. This is a weedless. They call it weedless. Nothing's ever truly weedless, but it does help, especially if you're fishing around timber, which I fish around a lot of timber and cover. This weed guard on it. So I've got my weed guard off here. Going to take my Wacky Worm in this O-ring. What I want to do from there is I'm just going to skin hook it just a little bit there. And you can see as I come out right there, then I'm going to take my little weed guard, I'm going to pop it back down on here, and this is all going to be set to go. So there you go. That is the Wacky Rig setup. Now I'm going to show you some variations on the Wacky Rig setup. All right guys, number 6, another variation of the Wacky Rig. What I'm going to use is this 1/16 ounce jig head. This one has a wire weed guard on it, but you can fish an open hook too, and you can also fish any weight that you want for the fishing conditions that you have. I mean, you could go an 1/8 ounce like this jig head here, and this is an open one, open style, no weed guard on it. You can go all the way up to an ounce or whatever it is, however deep you're wanting to get down and fish. But most of the time I'm going for about 1/16 ounce, maybe an 1/8 of an ounce like the other one I showed you, to add a little bit of weight to that to get it down to a certain type of structure I'm trying to fish or a weed line. But this super simple setup on this, so I've got my stick bait here. I'm going to take this and just halfway down, I'm going to run it right through the middle of the bait, okay? So now we've got it set up there. As you can see, as it falls, it's going to have that undulation of both these appendages coming down. And this setup is going to get pulled through the water, going to form that U, and then it's going to open up to that horizontal shake. And just a fantastic way right there to get a different look to the bait and utilize it in a different way. Number 7, guys, I'm going to show you the same setup we had just a second ago with one variation. Another component that I showed you a few steps back is the power spinner. So you're going to have this jig head with that power spinner on it. It's going to come through the water, it's going to fold up, and that power spinner, as it drops, these ends of the bait are going to, get it right here, they're going to undulate as it goes down, and then as it opens up, you're going to have this power spinner turning above it. This is a slow falling presentation, so I've done really well on this in clear water or when that bite is, tough and they're just not wanting to cooperate. But adding a power spinner to the back of this flick shake or this jig head setup on this Wacky Rig is definitely another way to rig it up and to get those bites when it's really, really tough. Number 8, guys, is the shaky head. And I'm going to show you how to rig this one up too. Super simple, weedless, great fish catcher, no matter where you're at in the country, time of year, this produces. So as far as jig head goes, the ones I like are the spot remover, the Pro model, because it has that pigtail on it right there, and it has this flat head, which I'll show you where I think that comes into play, and once again, what a difference it makes. But to set this up real easy, you're just going to take your bait right here, you're going to just screw it right in to this little pigtail that's on the jig head. Hopefully you guys can see that there. And once I've got it in there, you can see it's running straight down through here. Right where my bend is, like we talked before, I'm going to kind of move the bait up just a little bit. Then I'm going to push that back down in there, and that's running nice and straight on there. And the reason I like the Pro Spot Remover here is because when that bait hits the bottom, you can see, I think this head helps it stand up. You can use a ball head, you can use a football head, use any type of head you want, whatever you think works best for you in the conditions you're fishing. For me personally though, especially if I'm fishing somewhere that's rocky, flat bottom, pea gravel, something like that, this spot remover, like I say, when that bait falls down through the water column and it hits, I think that flathead helps it stand up just a little bit and kind of dance along the bottom there, which gets that tail to wiggling and that subtle, supple action that just drives those bass crazy. One other jig head I want to mention real quick since we're talking about the shaky head and jig heads is this swing head design. What that is, it has a ball head on top, and you can see that top, it just swings freely up there. But this is one that I have found over the years that it's one of my favorites, especially for that tough bite or those clear water conditions, because as this bait falls, it's got just freedom of movement as it falls through the water column. So this swing head design on here, and you can get it as a ball head, and I've seen them actually as a minnow head design and some other stuff, but to the ball head like that on this works great. So the swing head, another great option when we're talking shaky heads. All right, number 9 on how to rig up these stick baits is the Nico Rig. So in the Nico Rig, we're going to start, earlier in the video I showed you guys using the O-ring here. That's definitely going to come into play in this. But what I want to do this time is I'm going to take that O-ring and I'm going to slide it up towards probably the first 1/3 part of the body right here, okay? So right up in there, a little higher up, I moved it up a couple inches. I'll move it up just a little bit more. So I'm going to move it up the body right here, towards the fat side, the head side right here. And then I'm going to get me a nail weight. Now this is a VMC nail weight right here. You don't have to buy one that's that fancy. You can use just actually a regular finishing nail and push it in there. I've used those before where I cut the heads off the finishing nails with a hacksaw and use them. But after a while, making a bunch of those, it's easier to buy them, honestly. And they've got these little ridges which help secure it some too, but I'll show you what we'll do to help keep these in as well. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my nail weight and I'm going to push it right down into the head of this worm. And these nail weights too, if you want to change the weight on them, you know, how much they weigh and the diameter and such, you can actually take a pair of side cuts and cut them off, and that will change the length and the weight of those as well. But anyway, I'm gonna get this nail weight all the way down in here and flush with the top part right here. So there we go. Whoop, pop back out the top on me. So I've got my nail weight in here inserted, and push it down a little bit further. There we go. So there's my nail weight in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to rig it from the fat side forward right here. So the head of the bait essentially. So I'm going to get it and I'm going to just hook right underneath that O-ring again. So that's the setup on the Nico. So lines coming up through here. What I've got is every time I pull that bait up off the water or off the bottom, it's going to fold up, or just through the water column, it's going to fold up, and then this nail weight, this weight in the head of it's going to get it to dive down. Then when it hits the bottom, that tail is going to shimmy and it's going to start to fold up again, pick it back up. But that's the Nico rig. So you're going to have your bait here, nail weight in the end of it, and you're going to have your hook underneath that O-ring. I like to rig it this way because usually when that fish comes in, he's coming in from the back of the bait and he hits it. You'll see guys that'll rig it with the point facing towards the head. This is the way I like to rig it. I think I get a better hookup ratio with this. And one way you can also help to keep the nail weight in the end of this, little dab of super glue on the end of this when you get done with it. It doesn't take but a few seconds to dry, but super glue, just an invaluable part of your fishing arsenal. You can use it on so many different things when you're out there on the water. But little dab of super glue on the end of this Nico rig will help keep these weights in there and keep you from losing a bunch of them. So the 10th way I'm going to show you to rig this bait is something I think is great for light line applications. If you're wanting to use, say, 6 or 8 pound test, smallmouth fish, or just any application where you're wanting to use lighter line to have more of a finesse approach, is just straight shank hook ran straight up through the middle of the stick bait. And this is a Strike King Ocho, so it has a little different look to it. But if you're wanting to go for that finesse approach and not have as much hardware hanging off of it, weights, a wide gap hook, O-rings, things of that nature, and some of the other rigs I showed you, and you're really wanting to cut everything else out, this approach right here is really weightless. So you're going to have a lot of really great action from those stick baits, and you're just not going to have all that stuff hanging off of it. Like I say, if you're really wanting to get into a finesse approach with the fish. And I'm going to show you guys one other thing. It's not a way to rig it, but it's something that I think can really make a difference in your stick bait or any soft plastic that you use, fishing techniques, and that is using a fingernail file. Fingernail file, or you can rub these in your fingers to take the shine off this bait. This Senko, or this Ocho, you can see right here from Strike King. See how shiny that is? It's got that hue to it, and most of them have that. I mean, you know, that's a Senko. You can see that shine to it and stuff. But what I like to do before I get out of there in the water, because it's a pain to try and do it every single bait, especially if you're really going through a lot of baits because you're getting a lot of bites, is I'll rig up a bunch of these or do a bunch of these before I go out. But I like to take the fingernail file on the coarse side and just I'll actually usually put it flat on the table and just rub this whole bait with it. Because once you rub it with that, and you, like I say, you can rub it in between your fingers and stretch it out too. You can see though, it takes that shine, it starts to take the shine off. You can still see it there, but you sit there and scrub that bait with it really hard. It takes that shine off there. It gives it a dull hue. And I found, especially on sunny days, bluebird days, clear water, or even stained water, giving it that duller look really increases the bite ratio. You know, you ever notice you're out there and you're catching fish, but it seems like that piece of soft plastic you've been fishing for the last, hour and getting bites on, it's beat to absolute pieces, is getting bite after bite after bite. It finally dies, and you've got to change out baits. You put on a nice new shiny one, and you don't start getting bites like you had. Well, it's because I think a lot of times with that shine on there. So taking that shine off that with a fingernail file, or like I say, just rubbing your fingernails through it, up and down it, and taking some time to prep those baits and knocking the shine off these, is really going to increase your catch ratio. Guys, I hope you got something out of the video today, something you can add to your fishing arsenal that you found here. If you did and got something out of the video today, please consider subscribing to the channel. Don't forget, I'll leave some product links down in the description below too for some of the baits, terminal tackle, hooks, things like that I showed you guys today. Also, we have a 3,000 subscriber giveaway going on, so be sure to check out that video. I'll leave a link down in the description as well. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And remember, until that next video, get out there and fish.